this. Again, I'm somewhat handicapped. I do not know, the velocity of planet X. I don't know how close we are. But any, when you have a pressure wave in front of a moving object, even something a thin fluid as space, could some of this be?
Let me answer your question. I see where you're at. Let me answer that. Okay.
Is this a precursor? Is this some of the
no, absolutely it is. And I put now you have to understand something now. I completed and had the original release of my report, the DVD disc. It's called Incoming. I called it Incoming, the story of Nibiru. That disc was completed about the end of 2014. All right, about like October, November was when I first started talking about it. It was available about that time. So that's going back, 6 months or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I had genuinely finished what I would consider the research and putting in the information and trying to edit this thing and all. Is just mind-boggling, like I said, the amount of information and whatever that's in it. The editing is just unbelievable. So my point is this. Back at that time, let's say as of before the first of this year, at the end of last year, of 2014, 7 months ago, it was done. It was finished and was down in California being manufactured, being made available, okay? Now, in there, I included some of the following. I said that the winter that we have going through now, and just, so to speak, phasing out of now, would be probably the most record-breaking winter in 100 years, and it is. In California, they're going into now the 4th year of a drought, that by the end of another couple of months, California will not be able to grow anything for 50 years. It's the devastating amount of drought and destruction to the crops in the southwest area of the United States is permanently devastating, probably injuring it already today to the tune of maybe 25 years before it gets back on its ground. Now, if it ever does. In the Northeast, all right, in New Jersey, New York, up there, Connecticut, the worst winter they have ever experienced since keeping records. I predicted that in the DVD. You will see that in the DVD where I talk about it. All right? The death, the animals are still falling out of the sky. You know, we still have that. You know that thing? It's been going on for about 4 years. You know, millions of fish over here in Idaho 60 days ago. We had 2,000 Canadian geese fall dead from the sky in Idaho about 4 weeks ago.
See, that was not on any news report that I would have picked up.
Yeah, and it did. And when you know this, you can look it up and you will find it, in some little crack someplace. Yeah. But nonetheless, fortunately, because of the internet, you can look these little things up. Okay, but if you're not a guy like myself who does it full time for the last 30 years, see, I have my tentacles are out all over the place. I have people call me about some stuff that I don't even want to hear. I mean, talking about goofy things. But I always have my feelers out, and when you put it all together, all of a sudden you look at it and say, "Oh, wow, wait a minute! Like how come there's like in the last 4 years, 3, 4 years?" How come there's astronomers dying? People that are studying Planet X are being killed. 12 of them in one gondola in Switzerland at a meeting of astronomers, guys that were working on Planet X information. The cable broke, and 12 of them were dead. End of story for those guys. There's about 50 of them in the last few years. As of today, there's probably 50 dead bankers, guys that were 29-year-old heads of international banking overseas that killed themselves. You know, the numbers of bankers who are finding out about the application of funds and where the money's disappearing to is tremendous. They're all dead. They're killing them. They're killing them like crazy to keep them quiet. A lot of other people, good friend of mine, a fellow in 95 that I had met, his name's Phil Schneider. He was an engineer in some of these underground facilities back in the 90s. He had built and designed 13 of them for the government. He went out and started talking about things that he had discovered underground, and he told me, I was with him in 95, my wife and I, we had dinner, and he said they're trying to kill me. They said they're going to kill me. There's no question about it. They can't handle what I'm talking about. I'm explaining these underground facilities. They're going to take me out. And he said, he sat down with me, as a matter of fact, and he said, I'm telling people things here in 95 that they don't understand, don't believe, that it's way over their head. He said, Bob, you've been on the road doing these presentations for a while. Is there anything I can do so that the people will believe me, that this stuff is real, what I'm telling them? And, of course, he had some extraordinary tales. And I said, and some of the things back then, I wasn't sure. I didn't know if this guy was pulling my leg, you know, pulling everybody's leg. But when he sat down with me and he said, I need your help, because if I should leave some of it out, tell me what to do with that. Do I dare talk about this and this and this, or should I only tell them half of what I know? You know, what do you think, Bob? And then, of course, I answered the best I could. But also, before I left, we were speaking together at I think it was in Denver, Colorado. And before I left, he said, I want to give you some of my books because I worry about being dead, so being killed, eliminated. And so I took some of his books. He gave me things, included his father's book, a couple things of his father's, when he was an engineering designer for Adolf Hitler. It was very precious stuff for him. But he passed them on to me, and 2 weeks later he was murdered. He was dead.
Wow.
So the point that I'm making about this is that if this stuff is not serious, and if the bad guys are not really trying to keep this stuff quiet, then why are they doing all these things? Why are they creating drills that can go inside a granite mountain and bore a hole big enough so that it goes in and they back it out and you can drive an 18-wheeler in the hole that they just dug? You know, in China, they are so concerned with getting these underground facilities completed. They built the drill that I'm just described to you, but 3 times that size, so that, think about that. Now, I'm talking about a drill that can go into the side of a mountain and drill a hole, come back out and be big enough for an 18-wheeler to drive in the hole. Now we're talking...
Like a tunnel boring machine that we know of, for example, that built the tunnel
right.
under the English Channel. Yeah, it's a big...
Okay, but the Chinese have built one that's one on each side of the size that I was just talking about, and then one in the middle that's 1.5 as big as both of those. And it's all on one big operation, one big drill. That's what the Chinese are doing. Now, these people aren't stupid. You know, so if they're doing it, and our government's doing it, and the European governments are doing it, and Russia is doing it, why? All right? Now, they are also filling it with survival foods for many years for thousands of people into all of these facilities. They are putting that in last year and this year on the basis that they're going to need it in the next couple of years. They're not putting it in for 50 years down the road. They're putting it in for tomorrow. They're putting it in for as soon as they need it it's going to be there, and they're already full up to the brim with survival foods. All right. Next question. People
okay,
ask,
next question.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Next question I have. Obviously, as I was listening to you, I was reading down here through chapter 6, 7, and 8 of the Book of Revelation. And now, as I've even stated on my radio show, which is tomorrow night, with limited knowledge based on what I've read here over the last couple of years about Planet X, you know, the effects that I read here in about the sixth seal being broken makes perfect sense, you know, with the passage of Planet X. Gravitational disturbances will shift the poles, which would cause the stars to be out of place, as John the Revelator, you know, referred to. But as I look at this, you know, obviously there will be casualties, those that are not, in quote, selected to or allowed to hide away. But also, you know, Scripture is rather clear that there's going to be a large number that are going to obviously survive the passing of this thing. But what I'm curious about, and this is just an opinion, I'm just asking an opinion question, is going to somewhat come out of the clear blue sky. I believe, you know, in the rapture of the true believer, the removal, Scripture tells us we're spared from God's wrath. I do not really look at God's wrath beginning until pretty much after the seventh seal is broken. And so what I'm curious is, with respect to just getting your opinion, the rapture of the church, and I am a pre-tribulation rapture person, where do you see the rapture fitting in? I took some notes here. You know, I would like to say it's before, but it would seem logical to me that it could be during, or perhaps shortly thereafter, the passing of this planet. Do you have any thoughts on such things?
Well, okay. No, see, and you see, fortunately, you hit. It makes it a little bit vague, so to speak, because fitting in the biblical scripture that you're referring to in terms of the rapture, and unfortunately, it as we speak about Nibiru doing its standard physical effects that I believe, unfortunately, it's going to do. And by the way, I would hope to be completely wrong on this. Okay, you know, I wish I was totally wrong, and that a couple of years down the line we could get back on your program and laugh about it. That in fact we're still here, but I don't believe that to be the case. All right, in terms of everyone's belief and understanding of the rapture, of course, is widely varied. Every Christian you talk about has a slight variation on the theme, so to speak. But it could, if it happens as we and people of the Christian faith believe in the rapture, those that do, like yourself, the answer to your question, you already answered it. It could happen before, during, or after the passing of Nibiru. Nibiru is, the effects will be, if it does as it is projected by the people that have studied it, not only the biblical and historical part, but the potential scientific possibilities that could take place, and then all the rest of that, and astronomical studies of it, that part of it, putting it all together, it does not necessarily the end of Earth, all right, or the end of all of humanity.
Oh, no,
but it is, I believe, unfortunately, just strictly from looking at the fact that it previously has passed by, that it will cause tremendous floods, number one, due to the gravitational effects on the globe in general, pulling and pushing. You know, we forget that the moon and the sun just floating around out here is what causes the the variation of the tides every day.
Sure.
The tides go in, they go out, and it's a very minuscule gravitational effect. It's very small. You take an item 5 times or 7 times the size of Earth, that's a solid mass for the most part, and have it pass someplace between us and the sun, going around the, let's say going around the sun and then coming back out. From that point of view, the gravitational effect will yank the oceans right out of the seabeds, as was described in Noah's floods. They didn't. They had no idea where the rains would come for 40 days and all of that. But see, there's a lot of things also, like the stars. I'm going to give you a simple possibility when we talk about the stars disappearing from the sky for a period of time. All right, that happened the last time Yellowstone's volcanic mountain blew up. When you looked up, if you were in the middle of the United States for the following 5 months or so, you wouldn't see any stars.
That's true.
So to a biblical person, it doesn't have to mean that the entire Earth is moved in its location or anything like that. If we have 15 volcanoes go off, serious ones, at one time, the stars will disappear for some unknown period of time. And all we're talking about is the residue in the air, the dust and the junk in the air. Even if you didn't have Nibiru, okay? Follow me? So, and by the way, I also predict in my DVD there several months ago when we finished it that volcanoes would be reactivated. They already are. Are you aware that there are as many as 45 active volcanoes as we speak blowing the top?
Yes,
45
as a matter of fact, I
today.
am. It's something I check out somewhat frequently.
Right. Yeah,
and also the dramatic increase in
right.
earthquakes.
Yes, and in volcanic activity. Most people are not aware of it.
It's gone up dramatically here, particularly within the last year on a consistent basis.
Yes, sir. And I describe it as this. I describe Nibiru's return. It's beginning to come back in from way, way far out beyond Pluto, and crashing its way back again through the solar system. And I described it as kind of like a bowling ball going down the alley and I'm hitting the pins, because as it goes through outer space, you know, our entire solar system is as sensitive as the human body. And if you hit your toe real bad, you get that signal up in your brain real fast. All right. If you have difficulty walking or problems with your feeling on the end of the fingertips, you know all about that real quick. That affects your entire body, and that's what's happening already. That's why in the last few years, the tremendous numbers of animals, the whales don't know they don't know where to go. They don't know north from south. The birds are having problems. The bees are having problems. They can't find their hives. All right. The other day, by the way, I also mentioned in the DVD, be aware of the aurora borealis starting to pick up, and that's primarily from solar flares and electromagnetic forces coming out of the sun. The sun, as we speak, in the last 6 months to a year, has had some of the craziest reactions to something that it has had in 1,000 years. We're watching electromagnetic storms. Tomorrow, they're anticipating the possibility of us being hit tomorrow, actually, being hit with an extraordinary solar flare. We're going to be lucky if it misses us, because a big one took off day before yesterday, and if, in fact, depending on the location of it when the sun was facing Earth, as to whether we get a big one or a little one. Janet Napolitano, when she quit her job in head of the Homeland Security several months back, about maybe a year ago now, and also James Woolsey, the head of the Central Intelligence. He quit about the same period of time. Both of them, upon leaving, made a statement that everybody better be aware that we will be struck by electromagnetic force, probably from the sun, that will shut down half of the globe electronically. They both said, in their actual words, it's not a matter of if it's going to happen, it's a matter of when. And they would not elaborate. They didn't get into the fact that it's Nibiru's effects. But nonetheless, my opinion is that that's what's doing it. My opinion on the weather around the globe for the last 6 months, which has been extraordinary. I'm talking in Russia. They had floods in different parts of the globe, floods, blizzards. They've had snow in Cairo, Egypt, that they hadn't had in 150 years or something like that.
I heard that, but I didn't get a lot of details, but I picked up on that.
Well, that's my job. And all of it, all around the entire globe, it's going crazy. Now I'm going to give you a better one. I found out, and this is also in the DVD, I found out that about a year ago or more, maybe even 2 years at this point in time, the planets starting out where Pluto is and coming back in towards the sun are slowly heating up in our solar system. They are bouncing, wiggling, or jiggling in their orbits. The surface of all of the basic planets have had entire changes in their chemistry on the surface of all the major planets, et cetera, et cetera.
I wonder what would be affecting the basic geochemistry of the planet.
Well, because first off, the chemistry varies on all the planets. It's all different stuff. Some of it's gas, some of it's dust mixed with gas, some of it's hydrogen, some of it's sulfates, etc. But because of just the changes in heat and atmospheric pressure, movements, etc., like making a wave in the bathtub. You know, if you push your hand in the tub at the one end, it's going to end up hitting the other end of the bathtub, and that's what's taken place with Nibiru at this point, and all of its junk that's coming with it.
Brother Bob, I got to jump
Yes,
in here real quick because we've got people in the chat room that's asking some questions, and we've got some other things that we want to touch base on before we get done the show. We're down to about 17 minutes. It's been just an incredible ride here, and we sign off. That's going to take us a couple minutes. So really, we got about 14 to 15 minutes
give
left.
me a couple questions.
Okay, let's go ahead and do this. Brother John, thank you very much for joining us here tonight, and everybody tomorrow night at 9 o'clock. Something to think about with Brother John Glencoe right here on Interstellar Realities Radio. Once again, we're on with Bob Fletcher. That's BobFletcherInvestigations.com. And you need to go to that website and check out some of his research. I believe you will find it quite fascinating, to say the least. Just a couple things from our chat room. We always like to let people know that we're reading and we're here with them. Here's a question here, the top one. Any chance of a link for photos or video? And I'm assuming they're talking about some place they could see Planet X.
Well, first off, genuinely, in reality, any pictures of Planet X are questionable. I have some of them on my DVD. The bottom line, it is infrared. It's not. It has to be seen by infrared telescope of sorts at this time. Does not generate its own light. When it comes in closer, you will see it as a star in the sky as it grows bigger and larger as it comes in to go around the sun. But at this point in time, see, here's the problem, and it's also something that's a little difficult to put a handle on. Where is it? Okay, there's an argument as to whether it's 30 to 40 degrees off of our plane, what they call the plane of the ecliptic, which is where basically the planets are all on a reasonably flat plane, okay, give or take a few 100 million miles. All of our planets are pretty much on the same plane circling around, okay. If it is coming in on our plane, that's one thing. If it comes in, coming in close to our same plane that all the planets are on, that's one time schedule. If it's coming in from below or above on an angle of 30 degrees or so, which a lot of people think it is, then it will be a whole different story on the schedule of arrival. And the problem is, if it's behind the sun at any given point in time, it's like somebody says, where can we see it? Where can we see this thing? I have a great telescope. Well, you don't have one big enough unless you're the government. But number two, you don't know where to aim it. And the visual place where it may be at any given time would take an extraordinary amount of mathematical analysis. Once it starts coming in close enough to where it looks like a star and picking up the light from the sun itself or from other sources, then you will see it. Now, according to calculation, I'm going to tell you when it's estimated to be coming in. This is going to upset some people. By the way, let me give everybody, grab a pencil and a paper. I'm going to give you a separate address for those of you who are listening and may not have computers. If those of you who are not let's say computer-oriented, I'm going to give you an address where you can contact me, and I'll let you know how you can get a copy of the DVD. Now, it's been calculated related to all of the information put together, put into a computer and kicking out the analysis of the most likely time for its return, the second least likely time, and then the third very least likely time to be passing back by. Now, this is going to upset some people. The possibility is very high, according to Gil Broussard and many other people, and the relationship to when it has been passing previously, is that it will be seen in December, and it will take several months for it to come close enough to go around the sun. But it will be seen in December of this year. And then we will have January, February, and then the key months for it to be closest to pass near the Earth and causing the most trouble would be March and April of next year. All right? Now, and then it will head back out, and whatever damage it's done will be finished, and we'll be licking our wounds. If it is not seen, and what I'm talking about seen is where it's up there and it looks like a new star up there in the sky coming inward, it will be getting bigger every month, every week, a little bit bigger. It will look like a single star originally, even though there's probably a couple of moons going around with it and a lot of space junk. It'll be seen in December. It'll get bigger in January, February, and then March and April, make its journey around the sun and back out. The journey around the sun and back out is probably 155 days. Now, all of the best scriptures and information related to when it had passed before and was written in, logged in, and drawn, sketched out, and all the rest of that, it has always been, apparently, in March and April, like the Passover period of time. All right? So if, in fact, I'm going to say if, in fact, we don't see it this December, and with it coming in, then we probably have a complete year to wait for it to come. If it still has not arrived in that second year from today, if it's still not on its way in, then we would be into 3 years of March. Okay, in other words, March or April, 3 years from now. But the consensus is that it's very likely to be seen this December and to pass in the March of April of next year. All right. Now, it's not my estimate. That's an estimate of other people that are I consider to be the experts. Now, here's something else that's very important. This is where the politics fits into this thing. The people that are keeping this secret from us, all right, a lot of people say, when will they tell us this is coming? They will never formally announce that this is coming in, all right? They are going to have, this is from the point of view of the bad guys, all right? The guys that had the tickets to go underground in the underground facilities and bring their families with them, all right? Those guys are going to have martial law declared in the United States a few months before 100,000 astronomers start seeing this thing appearing on the horizon, coming in as a new star. So, what are we talking about? If the timeline is being seen first in December and January, they will have to have some form of martial law a few months before that in the United States. So they will have complete control over the general public when it starts to become a riot on the surface of the earth. If the leaders of any of the major nations came out and told the world that this thing is going to be coming in 5 months or 2 months or 6 months, that this thing was going to be coming by, if in fact they did that, it would be the end of all things. The financing would be, the entire globe would go into riots. We think the people in ISIS are going nuts. Those guys over there with their raping and plundering of the Saudi Arabia or with the Arabian area over there. We think they're crazy. You would see that on the entire globe if they announced it was going to happen. So it's not going to be announced. They will never tell us. Now, the next question is, how would they get away with declaring martial law? Because they have to have the general public to go along with it. They can't just do this. They have to have the public believing that it's a good idea for martial law. All right? So it will be one of three things. It'll either be some major terroristic acts, like 9/11 type thing, chemical, biological, or something like that, across the country in several places. Pull that off, the American public will accept martial law. If they announce that it looks like Russia is going to have a direct confrontation of World War III for some reason or another, and or Red China, that will be good enough for martial law. And the third one of possibility is obviously an outbreak of an uncontrollable disease like Ebola or something like that, getting large enough that it would be a believable reason for martial law. One of those three is going to constitute, and again, the best sign for people to understand when this thing might be coming around is when you see that martial law genuinely starting to take place. So then that's going to be the only thing that the average American public is going to be able to understand. And again, it could be even the solar flares. The solar flares that they were talking about, the head of the CIA, James Woolsey, the solar flares that he and Janet Napolitano was talking about, those will, when they pass, when a solar flare is big enough and passes across the globe, it will burn every bit of electronics, starting with all of our satellites, and then burning every single generation power on the globe, whether it's the entire globe or just half of it. That relates to how big and how much of a flare hits. When that happens, stop and think about it, folks. Everything is black. It's done. There's no power, no fuel, no food, no transportation, no police communication, nothing that depends on electronics will exist when one big solar flare does a trick on the globe. And again, all of these will be part and parcel to the passing of Nibiru whenever that takes place. And unfortunately, it looks like it may be within 3 years. And again, our sign that's going to be a realistic signature is going to be when they pull the need for martial law in America. That's all I've got for you. Now, if you got any more questions, we're about running off the clock here.
Yeah, we're just running off the clock, but I want to tell you, Brother Bob, it's been a real pleasure having you on the air with us tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Bob Fletcher from BobFletcherInvestigations.com, and you can go over there right now.
Let me, yes, you can do that. And those of you that don't have computers, got your pencil and paper. It's Bob Fletcher, Post Office Box 216, Bayview, that's Box 216, Bayview, Idaho, 83803. That's Bayview, Idaho, 83803, Box 216. Drop me a note. If you want the DVD, it's $24.95. We pay shipping, 4 hours, 2 discs. If you just want, drop me a note. I'll send you a copy of a catalog for those of you who don't have computers. I was surprised to find out the other day. I did a program, and I had forgotten about the folks that don't have computers, and I put out the address, and we had 100 letters. So whatever, it surprised me. There's a lot of people who still aren't plugged in out there.
The writing is here.
Do we know those lifts?
Yeah. Iset, Isis, Neter, Hur, Nebu, the Horus name. Nusir, Ra, An Khadijat, the eternal seed or gift of life, no? Or the eternal life gift. Nusir Ra is supposedly the name or who they relate the whole place to, this temple of the sun. He has another temple and a pyramid over there also related to him. And we can see that the writings also are not so, you know,
not so perfect there.
not so perfect, yeah. Especially that they used to draw it first and then carve it. It's not very special.
Yeah, it's not. There's other obelisks that Karnak they look like tool marks.
Yeah.
These ones.
Here they hardly scratched that stone with any symbols. You can hardly see the symbol on it.
You can hardly see it, yeah.
Yeah.
Same there again.
Here you can see some of the basins made from limestone, and each one has 3 drills in it. Again, the style of quarrying, creating millstones.
These millstones were important.
Very important.
For the quarrying.
It was like every like little village would have a special spot where they do the grain and stuff. Then these stones were needed. It's like the core of the factory.
Wow, here we are.
These ones, yeah.
Wow, unusual again. We've got 3 holes.
Yeah. We examined this, me and Stephen Miller, once, and we thought like why would this have 3? And why not 2?
That's
Why not just 1?
interesting. And then again, you have it repeated again. Same again, 3 again.
Yeah. So we thought that this could be actually like some used to receive in, and some used to leave out, and one was above or something like that. But
valves and mechanisms.
Not all be pouring in or all pouring
Same
out.
again over there. There's nothing but 3.
Yeah. Even these ones are exactly the same size.
Same, different product line over here.
Yeah. Very interesting. You can see how the stone itself isolated from each other.
Weathered. It's been weathered for God knows how many centuries.
God knows.
Two curious features as well, Yusuf, at the back, and you've got 2 channels as well, unusual channels. Yeah, you've got 3 holes, but the 2 outside ones have a channel feeding them.
Yeah, it was probably connected to copper pipes.
ancient hot tub.
That's what the Romans used. They used these once in Alexandria, and they made them actually a bathtub.
Wow. They just recycle
But
them.
it was, of course, one of similar to these basins. See, I still don't believe that the Carrara marble we find in Alexandria was brought by the Greeks or the Romans, because these people got so used to recycle the stones they found on the site. Plus, there are other evidence that supports my theory, because we know that these shapes that they took from basalt or Carrara marble, they made it as a stand for the statues. They usually put the statue on. So I examined one of them, and I saw that to house the statue on top of it, they used the poor style of hammering, while the piece itself is a clean cut, very similar to what we see in the Giza Plateau, even if the type of stone was different. So, but they all say like anything that's manufactured out of Carrara marble, that has to be Roman. I don't think so. The Romans dismantled and quarried the site of the labyrinth that used to be 3,000 chambers on that site. They quarried almost all of it, or there could be a layer that's still buried underground. But these people did not bother bringing the stone from the other side of the sea to this country, because of this, what they do, they wouldn't have the culture of the sword and occupying other countries to take their goodies. If you're able to create and construct these beautiful artifacts, you wouldn't need to go and put war on other countries so you can take the goodies. If you can build and prosper, you will build and prosper and protect, not go put war on other countries. And we can see example for them in every site. Look, this part here also, this piece for example. Come on. This is part of the Roman use, when they used to also reuse these stones to make also create this drill bigger and make it like another type of the millstone.
Yep, smaller, long and narrow.
Different types. Yeah, this one was just another device to smash the stuff in it, like herbs and stuff, or spices. And the other one was the wheel.
Round and flat. Yeah.
Round and flat.
This one tall and narrow, yeah?
Exactly.
Wow.
Let's go up.